Hello and welcome to episode 31 of On My Studio Table. Again, I'm really looking forward to sharing with you what's been happening in my studio over the past week. Just behind me, I've got some fabric hanging that I eco-printed recently, and if they look familiar to you, it's because you would have seen them in episode 30. I said in the last video that I would be listing them in the next few days, and so they have now been listed. So if you'd like any of these fabrics, they could be yours. I also have listed the silk fabrics that I shared in the last video. I think there are 4 pieces of those. These were all done with eucalyptus leaves that we picked on our holiday away, and also foraging on our own land near our home when we came back. And you'll recognise some of the things that I do use repeatedly. They're all on vintage blanket. One of them has a little hole, but that's part of its story and its history. I have a lot to share with you, as I said, and I've done some various journals. Some of them you've already seen them in progress, and a couple of them are brand new as in newly made. So a lot of them have recycled papers in them, and I use a lot of things that other people would throw away, and I'll explain that a bit further as we go along. So I hope you enjoy what I've got to share with you. December was an amazing month for my YouTube channel, so thank you so much for all those who watched, who liked, who subscribed. I do really appreciate it. And many of you are sharing my videos as well, which really does help. So if you haven't subscribed and you do like what I'm offering, please think about subscribing and clicking the notification bell so you know when I put out new content. I try to do weekly videos, and I also usually do some little shorts in between. The other thing, of course, is if you like the video, that you hit the thumbs up button. I also have a VIP membership and a Ko-fi membership, and the links are below. So they are other ways that you can also support my business, which I do my best to make as ethical and sustainable as possible. This new project started almost by accident. I was just looking through my eco-printed papers and thinking about what to do. And my plan was to use the tea bag packaging, and you'll see some of it here, to make more of the tiny tea time books. And then the canvas that I'd eco-printed, I was going to make a scroll out of. And I mentioned both of these things in the last video. But things change. And I do think it's very important to allow your materials to tell you what they would like to have done with them. So this is the tie, and that's recycled t-shirt yarn that's been tied around bundles for the dye pot. And then these are the papers, most of which I eco-printed last week, some of which I eco-printed the week before, and a few from my collection in my box of eco-printed papers. I've started to put it together, and I'm using a Slipknot binding, which I learned from Lisbeth Degn. I was hoping to finish it actually for this video, but it's taken me quite a long time because, of course, I decided to put a lot of pages in this. It's actually something that you can just enjoy as it is, but it's also something that could be added to, so things like collage and journal writing and that kind of thing. And what I decided to do was to mix up the pages. And I've got cardboard from cardboard boxes that I used in stacked bundles in the dye pot, the canvas, tea bag packaging, and I've extended it on the top and the bottom because it wasn't quite long enough. And that's the green on the other side that I showed you last time. Some more cardboard box. When they get wet, the layers come apart, and so you end up with 3 or 4 layers, and that's one of the layers. Canvas. Piece of abaca paper which I tore in half and then attached some tea bag packaging to, and some of the canvas offcuts from my art journal ended up becoming tabs, and these are the pages I haven't attached yet. So that's more canvas, more tea bag packaging with additions on the top and the bottom, and layers of corrugated cardboard, one of the inner layers, and I reinforced the edge because it wasn't strong enough as it was. More canvas. I think I said abaca paper. I meant cardi paper. So cardi paper with some tea bag packaging attached. More cardboard box and another tab, and then a piece of tea bag packaging with the wrong side inside the cover, or if you call it the wrong side, the green side inside the cover and the other side on the outside. So I think this is going to be something that I'm quite excited about, actually. I really like it. I really like how the pages are not even. I really like how there are tabs and other things that give you interest along the page side. And I really like how the spine area is starting to look. And you'll notice that the Slipknot binding actually gives you a kind of chain effect, a bit like Coptic binding, but you have a separate thread for each set of holes going through, and you don't have to use a needle. So stay tuned. I'll share this hopefully finished in the next video and also on social media. You might have noticed in some of my photographs and also by the holes in the book that I just showed you that you need something to pierce the holes. Also, when I stitch into paper, you can use a needle, but that can be quite hard on your hands. So some years ago, I actually made this tool, which is like an awl, and it's just a large needle stuck into a cork. I put some glue in after I made the hole, put the needle in eye first, and then another cork to protect the point from hurting me when I rummage around in my box of things. And I use that a lot for punching the holes for when I'm stitching in paper. But if I'm doing a binding, you really do need an awl or something more robust. And I soon realised that after I had been using the makeshift awl for a little while. I ended up buying 2 sizes of awl. This is probably the one that I use the most because it's not too big a hole. But with the Slipknot binding, you really do need a larger hole because you have to try to push 2 strands of wax linen thread through the hole, or whatever thread you're using. So that makes a bigger hole, and that's really useful for that kind of situation. It really depends on what you're going to bind your book with. And I've just recycled some wine corks to put on the point. Didn't come with those, but I think for safety reasons, that seems to be a good idea. I don't have a date for this, but I'm guessing, 1800s or maybe even early 1800s. There's part of a botanical illustration, and there are all sorts of things like animals, birds, plant life, ships, architecture, and even bones. So depending what theme you're working on, you would find something that would suit what you're doing. And then sometimes I like to tear the text part as well and use it as backgrounds on cards and journal pages and that kind of thing. I also used it for signatures in one of the projects I'm going to share with you today. If you follow me on Facebook, you would have seen this little accordion book. I had a lot of fun making this. This was half of the watercolour paper that I eco-printed last weekend. And it was a long strip because I had cut an A3 sheet in half vertically. And that's ideal for an accordion book. So I'll just open it out. It opens up like a normal little book. And I use offset pages just so I don't waste paper. And that makes it interesting too if you're going to do any journaling or anything inside. And then you come to the next section and that has another signature in it. Similar idea. And then this looks like you're at the back cover. And I've put my stamp there and written down who it's made by. But then you keep going. So you turn it over, keep going, and you've got some more pages. And that's another cover section. And then you're back to the front. So I actually call this a reversible accordion book or reversible book. Some people call it a flip-flop book. I've only just realised this recently. But whatever you call it, it's a very useful book form to do and quite simple. And it only has a pamphlet stitch in the creases of the accordion folds. And I just used a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, which is really good for this size. If you were going to do something with a longer spine or a longer page, you'd probably want to go to 5 or 7 holes just to make sure it's strong. On the front, you might remember in the last video I shared some small pieces of eco-printed card, and they are from inside the box of tea bags. And I use the tea bags, of course, for artwork, and I use the boxes now for eco-printing, and this was one of the dividers. So, of course, they went into the bundles as well, and they got eco-printed too. I collaged the one of them onto the cover. I just used double-sided tape an archival one to stick it down to the cover, and then used my little makeshift awl to punch holes so that I could stitch around it. This little bird is one of the lovely little illustrations from the vintage dictionary that I showed you. And there were quite a few bird pictures, and I have used them in something else, which I'll show you in a moment. So I just love these drawings. They're just so beautifully done. And I rough tore them out and then stitched around the edge, again punching the holes with my little homemade awl. You do see the stitching inside the cover. I don't mind that. I think there's an honesty about being able to see the back of the stitching as well as the front. This is now listed for sale at gonerustic.com. Of course, I'm continuing to add things to my art journal about fast fashion, and I'm trying to be positive as well as raising awareness of the issue. So that's the reason I've put Celebrate Nature on this particular page. Because I've used eco-printed papers and canvas, I am actually using nature as a kind of foundation for this journal. And I think the whole reason that we're concerned about fast fashion and other industries that are very wasteful and damaging to the environment is because we know that nature is important and we're not looking after it. And in fact, not just looking after it, but celebrating it. So that's why I've put that in there, and I've stamped them with my little text stamps and letter stamps and onto the margins of some vintage sheet music as before. These are new editions, so I won't show you everything that I've done because I've already shown you quite a bit in the last two videos. But I thought it was important to do some writing to explain what this book is about, because a lot of it is symbolic. And I found a really good quote that was on the European Parliament website about what the circular economy really means. I mentioned this as a theme in this book because I have a lot of circles. There's one on that page, for example, but they're all incomplete or cut. So this was the definition, and I really thought it was a good definition. The circular economy is a model of production and consumption, which involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, and recycling existing materials and products as long as possible. In this way, the life cycle of products is extended. In practice, it implies reducing waste to a minimum. And I had to fit the word minimum at the bottom of this music sheet, but it's actually got the letter F there, which means forte, which means get louder. And that little symbol there means loud and getting louder. And I thought that was an important word, minimum. So it's worth almost shouting that out. This page, I didn't want to add too much because the design of the original journal is so beautiful already, but I've used a tea bag, which I've recycled from the tea drinking that I do. I do drink quite a lot of tea. And then a little canvas offcut and some found buttons. So all of these are recycled, reused items. Just find the next one. I've made little bookmarks, but I might have made them a bit small. Here we go. There's another one. This is a canvas page, which I pretty much like as it is. It's quite subtle. So all I've done is just put a little piece of paper with the word for on it underlined. So when we talk about manufacture and our goals and, you know, what's actually driving us, what is it actually for? What are our goals? So I thought that little word for was pretty important. And I've used double-sided tape and then some stitching to hold that on. This is another one that I've done some more work to. I think when I showed this to you last time, they were just glued. Now I've added some stitching, so that's a little vine, again referring to nature. The word secure. Secure, again, has quite a few meanings. I mentioned last time that some of these words can be taken in different ways. Secure can mean secure in your job, that you're happy in it, that you're being paid a decent wage, and that you're working in good conditions, and you feel like you have a future. Secure can also mean to tie something down or to restrict something. When you think about the word security or a person who is a security guard, that's actually to prevent or restrict. So I put that word there because some people are very restricted in their career choices and in the ways that they can actually earn enough to make a living. As you know, being an artist can be quite a solitary existence. You spend a lot of time thinking and making pretty much on your own. So I find that being in some online groups really helps me have a sense of community, a place where artists can mutually inspire each other. Some of us are beginners, some of us are more experienced, but it's just so lovely to be able to interact with other people. And I often have videos playing while I'm working in my studio. And that's a really lovely thing because I feel like I have a friend in the room with me. In the groups also, you can share the work that you're doing. And sometimes the person who runs the group comes up with a really great idea that you can participate in. So this is one of those. I'm in a group run by Jeri Bellini called Aging Creatively and Gracefully. I'm not a young woman, but I'm just as passionate about my artistic practice as I ever have been, probably even more so. And what she has suggested in the group is that we start a gratitude journal. And she made it very, very simple. So it's really, really good for beginners or people who are more experienced. And I just had a lot of fun making this. And the idea is that we use 1 page a week to write down things that we are grateful for. So sometimes we do need to express the things that are hard, but also it really helps our mindset if we can think about the good things and the things that give us contentment and happiness and the things that encourage us. Again, I've used a piece of recycled t-shirt yarn to be the closure or the tie for this journal. And I've attached one of my eco-printed labels to it and used my letter stamps to stamp the word grateful onto a piece of vintage paper. That was the margin from some vintage sheet music. I save all of those because they're really lovely. I have some cut edges and some rough edges where I've torn them off. And I really like the look of the vintage paper. So that goes around the journal to keep it together, because this is not a bound journal in the traditional sense. It's actually just the signatures. So we were encouraged to make 4 signatures of 4 pages each. And of course they're doubled over. So that gives you 8 pages. And then you've got both sides of the pages, which gives you 16 in each signature. And that's more than enough to do a whole year's worth. What it does, it gives you a bit of room so that if you find it hard to keep 1 week on 1 page, you can spill over onto the next page. I'm still thinking about what kind of paper I'm going to use, because I'm going to write the things down on a separate piece of paper and then I'm going to attach it to the page somehow. So I'm still thinking about how that's going to work. But I just thought I'd show you the little illustrations that I got out of this lovely old dictionary. So that's another bird. And this time I don't think I'm stitching them in, I'm just gluing them. So I've just used a glue stick for this, a good quality glue stick, because some glue sticks really don't work very well. I didn't do it on every page because there is other interest there, such as text. This is promotional material from some frames that I bought, which I shared last week, box frames. And a lovely tree, just things that I liked for no particular reason. Some botanical illustration. And of course this is the sheet music that I've been using for quite a few things. Another bird drawing. This is recycled packaging that came in the box that the frames came in. And an osprey. And I just really enjoyed putting this together. There was no pressure at all. It was just simple to do. And sometimes when you're working on long-term projects, you need something a little bit light-hearted because you're having to put so much thought into the creation of these other things. So my art journal, for example, and my wetlands journal, which I've shared about in the last few videos, are requiring quite a bit of thought, and they actually deal with quite serious issues. So you just need to have a break from that every now and again. Have something that doesn't take so long and doesn't require as much thought. I love that insect drawing. A bit more of the promotional material from the frames, and another bird. Some packaging. This one I've put a pumpkin and a fish. So I'm being a bit random about it, where I've placed these little images. And I didn't want them to take up too much room because I need room to put whatever my piece of paper is that I'm writing down the things I'm grateful for on. It's a bit of fig leaf, a nautilus, and just lovely little additions to this journal. And the drawings just are so charming, I think. The different parts of a flower. I do really love birds, and because I love nature, of course, plants are going to come into it, aren't they? That's an eagle. We have lovely sightings of wedge-tailed eagles here every now and again. Sometimes one, sometimes two, and sometimes three. And so it's lovely to see three because you know that there's a fledgling that's learning to fly. That means that they are actually doing quite well. There's another bird. And an emu, which of course is very Australian. They don't naturally occur in Tasmania. Somebody did bring them to Tasmania decades ago, and they've had to be controlled because they were getting to be a bit of a nuisance. But they are on Maria Island, so it's just interesting when you can see them in a natural habitat rather than in a zoo. And of course some birds to finish it off. So that's the gratitude journal, and I'm looking forward to putting things in it once I've decided how I'm going to do that. Even though I haven't made any more tea time journals, I seem to enjoy making these very little journals. So this is a little artist journal or an art journal. I just made it out of bits that were lying around, so just scraps. Even this is the selvage of a piece of fabric, and I've just stitched that on to the spine with some stitches, embroidery thread I think, and I've called it Grow. And I'm going to sell this, but I really enjoyed making it. It has room in it for you to add what you would like to do as well if you decide that you'd like to own this. But it can be just enjoyed as it is also. So again, just some little scraps stitched on, some of the illustrations from the vintage dictionary that I was talking about, some eco-printed paper. Oh, and I should tell you, the cover is actually eco-dyed fabric that had a very tiny dot on it, and which I had also over-dyed with some indigo. I don't think I've got any more of that left, actually. I don't throw away much. That's a piece of naturally dyed cotton or linen, some found buttons, some eco-printed vintage silk. That's a piece of eco-dyed vintage wool and some eco-printed paper stitched on top. Another illustration, and that is actually on one of the dictionary pages that I've eco-printed. This one has a little fold out, so that's a representation of the different climate zones of the earth, which is probably changing as we speak. And then you open it out and it says nurture, and that's been sewn onto a piece of cotton interlock. This is some linen and a bit of vintage lace. Some more eco-printed paper. Some cotton interlock with a selvage piece stitched on. That was sent to me by an online friend from the UK when I was having radiation treatment. And those pieces of fabric, I try to use them really well because they're very precious. And another little drawing, and it opens up and it says, with the rhythm. I was just thinking of the song, The Rhythm of Life, and that applies to a lot of things. And then we go to the back of the book, which is the other half of all the pages I've shown you. And this is one I put on this morning of touch and some stitching. Another botanical drawing from the dictionary and a page as well. Some more torn eco-printed paper and eco-dyed wool. So these were all scraps out of my scrap box. Most of these I didn't trim much. They were pretty much as they came. Some more silk with some gum leaves on it. The other part of the cotton or linen, and I've stitched a strip of fabric on that. And then another little short page with a botanical drawing on it, and then the back cover. I really enjoyed making that. So another little short-term project in between the bigger projects. There's a business in Tasmania called the Spotted Quoll, and one of the things the owner of the Spotted Quoll does is design fabrics, and she was offering some free fabric swatches, so I ordered some, and they're a lovely combination of muslin, linen, hemp, cotton voile and organic cotton plain weave, so they're all organic fabrics. And I thought I really need to use these, but some of them were a little bit bright for what I like to do. And so I followed Catherine Chambers' advice. Catherine runs a channel called K3 and Cloth Tales, What she does is she soaks them in a strong tea solution, sometimes with rust as well, to actually knock the colours back a little bit. And I really love that. So that's what I've done to these fabrics, and they really are beautiful. I'm going to use them in my project that I'm doing with another online group. So all of us have been asked to do a certain exercise each week for the year based on circles. You can see how lovely these fabrics are. So I thought I would use them somehow with that project. And this is the first piece that I've done. And every week we're given some guidelines to follow. So this particular one was to draw or paint a circle in black on a piece of white or cream fabric, and then use only straight stitches to embroider it. So it was amazing to see the different variations that people did on what is meant by straight stitches, what is meant by circle. Some had partial circles, some had solid circles, some had very tiny ones, some had really big ones. Some were dark like mine are, some were barely visible. It was just so interesting. And Lisbeth Degn, who I mentioned before, of Dragenkunst, has set up this particular project. So I'll put the link in the description if you're interested in joining. Just to finish this video, I just wanted to share a little bit about some baking I did last weekend. My husband had a birthday, so we had a little bit of a family celebration at our place with a barbecue lunch, and I made some spelt loaves and then hollowed one of them out and put some brie cheese and various other things inside. I also made a choc hazelnut cake, and this is a really easy recipe, so I'll put a link to it below, and I hope you enjoy it.